Have you ever stopped and wondered, could the U.S. military legally patrol your neighborhood? And I don't mean the National Guard. I mean the actual army, soldiers, Humvees. It sounds like something straight out of a movie, right? Well, it's not. There's a 200-year-old law on the books that says it's totally possible. And that law is called the Insurrection Act.
So let's just cut right to it. The answer to that question, it's yes. With just a single signature, the president can put active duty troops on American streets to deal with a crisis. So today we're going to pull apart this incredible power, what it is, when it's been used, and what it would actually look like if that signature ever happened again.
Okay, let's get into it. To really wrap your head around what the Insurrection Act does, you first have to understand the one big fundamental rule it was designed to break.
So at its heart, the Insurrection Act of 1807 is basically a presidential superpower. It gives the president, and only the president, the authority to look at a situation inside the U.S. and decide, this is so out of hand, the police can't handle it, even the National Guard isn't enough, we need the military.
Now this right here is the perfect way to think about it. Normally, in America, there's a huge legal wall. It's called the Posse Comitatus Act, and it's like a firewall. It separates the military from civilian police. Soldiers fight wars overseas, cops handle crime at home. Simple, right? Well, the Insurrection Act is the president's master key. It's the one thing that can unlock that firewall and let the army act like a police force.
And this is an absolutely critical difference. We see the National Guard called up all the time, right? For hurricanes, floods, big protests, but they answer to their state's governor. Invoking the Insurrection Act, that's a whole different level. We're talking about deploying active duty troops, the Army, the Marines, and they answer only to the president. It's a direct federal takeover of a situation.
And listen, this isn't just some theory from a law book. This power has been used. And it's been used at some of the most critical, most intense moments in American history.
Let's go back to 1957. The Supreme Court had ruled that schools had to desegregate, but in Arkansas, the governor literally used his own National Guard to form a human wall to block 9 black teenagers from going to high school. So President Eisenhower, a former 5-star general, invoked the act, federalized the Arkansas Guard, and sent in the legendary 101st Airborne Division to enforce the law.
And you have to really picture this scene. The soldiers escorting those kids to class weren't just anybody. They were combat veterans, the Screaming Eagles, with bayonets fixed to the ends of their rifles. It was a message, sent loud and clear. In a showdown between a state and the federal government, the U.S. military would have the final say.
Now let's jump forward 35 years. It's 1992 in Los Angeles. The city absolutely explodes after 4 LAPD officers are acquitted in the brutal beating of Rodney King. The local police were just completely overwhelmed. The city was on fire.
And the human cost was just staggering. Over 6 days of chaos and violence, 63 people lost their lives. President George H.W. Bush reached for that master key. He invoked the Insurrection Act, and suddenly more than 10,000 federal troops, Army soldiers and U.S. Marines, were on the streets of Los Angeles.
The scale of the destruction is hard to even fathom. Fires raged, stores were looted, and when the smoke cleared, the damage was estimated at over $1 billion, with a B.
So here's the bottom line. The military intervention worked. It put a stop to the violence. But it also left everyone with this lingering, very uncomfortable question. It proved an American city could be put under what was basically military occupation to restore order, and that set a dangerous precedent.
And don't for a second think this is all just dusty old history. The act has come this close to being used in our lifetimes, which proves it's still a very live option inside the White House.
I mean, think about it. After Hurricane Katrina in 2005, there was a huge debate about using the act to send troops into New Orleans, but it got stuck in a standoff with the governor. And even more recently, during the widespread protests in 2020, reports say an order to invoke the act was actually drafted and waiting on the president's desk, only to be stopped by pushback from senior military leaders.
Okay, we've covered the history. Let's make this personal. What would it actually feel like for you if the Insurrection Act was invoked in your city tomorrow?
It would probably start with that awful buzzing alert on your phone. But it's not a weather warning. It's a blunt, chilling message. A civil emergency has been declared. From now on, all official information comes from a central military command.
Immediately, you'd be told to stay home, a strict curfew,
say 8 p.m., would be put in place. And it wouldn't be enforced by police cars, it would be enforced by military Humvees. The soldiers at the corner are in combat gear, holding assault rifles. They are trained for war zones, not your neighborhood.
And if you had a real emergency and had to leave your house, you wouldn't get pulled over by a cop. You'd be stopped at a military checkpoint, run by a young soldier whose main order is to maintain security at all costs. They have the final say on where you can and can't go, period.
Now, this is where it gets really strange. Your constitutional rights don't just disappear, but they become, let's say, complicated. A soldier doesn't operate on probable cause like a police officer does. In that situation, you're not really seen as a citizen. You are part of a security problem that needs to be managed.
So, all of this begs a huge question, right? Why does a law this extreme, with virtually zero checks and balances from anyone else in government, still exist pretty much as it was written in 1807?
Well, the simple answer is pure politics. Neither party wants to be the one to give up such a powerful tool because, hey, they might be the ones in power who feel they need it someday. Every attempt to reform it has gone nowhere. And now think about this. Combine that 19th century law with 21st century tech, facial recognition, location tracking from our phones. It creates a power that the writers of this law could never have even imagined.
And that leaves us with the core dilemma of the Insurrection Act. Is it a vital safeguard, a last resort for a president to pull the country back from the brink of chaos? Or is it a dangerous blank check, just waiting for the right crisis and the wrong leader to cash it? That's the question that hangs over this incredible and, frankly, kind of terrifying presidential power.